The day the sky fell, the sky changed without warning. It was a normal day. Children played in the streets, shops opened with morning light, news reporters talked about sports and politics. Planes crossed the clouds above, people had no idea their lives were about to change. The first blast came at noon. A silent flash of white light covered the horizon. Then came the sound like a scream from the sky. Buildings fell like paper towers broke in half. People ran, but there was nowhere to go. Fire spread. Fast sirens cried, but no help arrived from above. Came ships, black metal floating like shadows. No windows, no wings, no mercy. They moved across cities. One by one, they dropped energy bombs. No missiles, just heat and destruction. Some called them demons. Some said angels of death. But they were not myths, they were real, and they laughed. The world watched the broadcast. A voice spoke from the clouds. It was sharp, cruel, proud. It said humans had been judged. Unworthy, weak, a danger to the galaxy. The punishment was simple destruction. People screamed. Some prayed. Some just stared. Governments fell apart. Leaders tried to call each other. No one answered. Satellites burned in the sky. One city after another vanished. New York became ash. Tokyo sank under fire. London cracked open like dry land. The voice returned. It laughed again. Said Earth was no match. Said this was just a warning. But something happened the voice did not expect. A small base in the mountains remained untouched. It was old, hidden, buried deep under stone. Inside were a few people, a retired general, a young pilot, a stubborn engineer, and others who survived by chance. They watched the destruction. They listened to the voice, but they did not cry. They did not kneel. They planned. The general looked at the maps. Red marks covered every continent, but one corner still blinked green. He pointed to it, said this was where they start. The pilot asked how they could fight such power. The engineer said they do not fight with strength, they fight with understanding. She had seen the alien energy patterns. She said the bombs were fast but not smart. She believed they could be copied, studied, turned into something new. They worked in silence. Outside, the world burned. Inside, a small group refused to die. In other parts of the world, survivors hid in caves, old shelters, subway tunnels. Some sent radio signals, weak and broken. But they reached the mountain base. The general told them to stay hidden, told them not to lose hope, told them that Earth was not finished. Not yet. Days passed, then weeks. The aliens left their ships, vanished into the stars. The voice gave one last laugh. It said Earth was finished. Then it went silent. The world was quiet. Too quiet. From ashes rose smoke. From smoke came footsteps. From footsteps came voices. The young pilot trained others. The engineer built machines from broken alien parts. The general taught tactics from old wars. They were few, but they had purpose. A drone flew from the mountains. It moved across the dead lands. It recorded everything. It brought back images of pain but also of life. Small gardens growing, people helping each other, fires turning into warmth. Survivors were not soldiers. They were shopkeepers, farmers, students, but they learned. They changed in the third month. The first working device lit up. It was small. It hummed with alien energy. It glowed blue. It was human mad. General smiled for the first time. He said, "It begins." Now the pilot asked, "What begins?" The engineer answered, "Without fear." She said, "Payback far in space." The alien leaders sat in a room of glass and metal. They watched stars like insects. They spoke of new targets. They did not speak of Earth. They believed Earth was silent. They believed humans were broken. They did not know the fire they had started. They did not see what waited in the ruins. They did not hear the voice rising again. It was not the voice from the sky. It was a different voice. A human voice, low, strong, unshaken. It said, "We remember." It said, "We build." It said, "We fight." And Earth began to rise again. The ashes of hope. The days after the attack were slow. The world looked like a grave. Smoke still danced in the wind. Skies stayed dark. Air carried the smell of burned dreams. But deep below, the mountain stone work had started. Not just work, but something stronger, a reason to fight. Inside, the hidden base rooms buzzed with life. People repaired broken wires, checked old systems, mapped safe paths across ruined lands. The engineer led a team of builders. She used alien metal to create shields, made tools from wreckage, tested wires with care. Her hands never stopped. The pilot trained in silence. He ran in narrow halls, flew old jets and simulators. He knew the sky was dangerous now, but he also knew it was the key. He said nothing, but his eyes carried fire. The general stood before a board, not of war, but of people. Names written in chalk, people still alive, people still missing. He made plans, simple ones: gather, build, unite across the broken earth. Small groups found hope in signals. A short sound, a message from the base. It said, "Come if you can." It said, "We are here." It said, "Earth breathes still." One family walked 10 days through ruins. They crossed rivers filled with ash. They passed empty cities where silence screamed. But they reached the mountain. The door opened, warm light touched their skin. They cried not from pain, but from belief. Others followed, a nurse with her medical box, a teacher carrying books for no one, a boy with one shoe and a fire in his eyes. Each person brought something, not just skills, but stories, memories, hope. The base grew, new rooms were dug. Food was shared, songs returned, quiet ones at night. Songs that spoke of stars, of loss of strength. One day, a boy brought metal he found in a field. The engineer looked at it. Her eyes lit up. It was part of an alien drive. She took it to her lab. Hours passed, then she shouted for the first time. She said it could work, showed the general side the drive. Core was simple, not in design but in logic. She said humans could copy it, not just copy, but improve. The general nodded. He called the pilot, said it was time. The pilot flew a small drone, not far, just across a valley, but the drone moved fast, silent. Powered by alien energy, it returned with images. One image showed a fallen alien ship, half buried in the dirt, not moving, lights dead. A perfect place to learn. A team was formed. They wore light suits, carried scanners, moved like shadows. They reached the ship by night, entered through a broken wall. Inside they found more than wires. They found maps, data cores, a symbol written again and again. A mark of pride, a mark of the core. They took what they could, left fast, returned before dawn. The engineer read the data. She found coordinates, found signal patterns, learned how the core saw humans, like ants, unthinking, unfeeling, weak. She smiled, not with joy but with challenge. The general called a meeting in a small room lit by lamps. He stood before survivors. He told them the truth. Earth was not safe, but Earth was not alone. They were together, and together they would fight. No one shouted. No one clapped, but every eye burned with lighting. The next weeks, work doubled. Metal was shaped, circuits born from dirt and fire. A new drone was made, bigger, faster, stronger. The pilot tested it in the sky. He flew above the clouds, looked down at a broken world, but in his heart he saw something else, a world that refused to kneel. Far across space, the core received a message, a short burst noise. They thought, they laughed, deleted it, moved on. They had no idea the message carried code, code that mapped their scout paths, showed their blind spots, opened their secrets. The base watched the stars, tracked movements, learned patterns. Every night brought new data. Every day brought new tools. Then came the first fight. A lone scout ship returned, floating above a dead city, scanning for life. It found none, or so it thought. The pilot waited. His drone flew under radar. Powered by silent energy, it climbed high, locked on the scout. The signal was sent, one pulse, then light. Scout ship cracked, split open, fell in pieces. Earth had struck back. The base stayed silent. No cheers, just focus. They knew this was only the start. The general marked a new path on the board. Not survival, but resistance. The engineer handed the boy a device, told him to guard it. It was small, but inside burned a spark from alien fire. The boy held it close, felt its heat, said he would protect it. The pilot looked at the stars again, not with fear, but with challenge. Earth had been bombed, burned, mocked, but Earth was not gone, it was changing, rising, becoming something new, and the galaxy would soon feel it. Their laughter fades, the stars above looked calm. But under that calm silence, a storm was growing, not in space, but in the hearts of humans. They had seen their world fall. They had heard the voice of their enemies. That voice had mocked them. That voice had laughed. Now that voice would change inside. The mountain base. The general walked through long tunnels. He passed workers fixing broken wires. He passed children painting suns on walls. He passed soldiers training with homemade weapons. This place was no longer a shelter. It had become something else. A forge, a nest, a spark waiting to rise. The engineer stood beside a large screen, she explained. The signal they had captured, it was from the core command ship, not far from Earth, orbiting a red moon. She said it was a brain controlling scout ships, watching human movement, sending reports to the core council. The general asked what could be done. The pilot said one word: disrupt. They had learned the core weakness: overconfidence, arrogance. They believed humans were simple. They believed emotion was weakness. They believed fear made humans fall. But humans had learned their thinking, had studied how they moved, how they attacked, how they spoke, and now humans would use that. The base held meetings, no chairs, no tables. People stood close, whispered plans, shared ideas. Old soldiers spoke of guerrilla tricks, young minds drew paths on paper. One mechanic showed a new weapon. It used heat waves, not bullets, small but powerful, easy to build, easy to hide. A group of volunteers prepared for a mission. Their task was not to destroy, but to confuse, to send false signals, to trick the core into believing. Earth was empty. The engineer gave them a box. It blinked with blue light. It copied core code. It sent fake messages. It would make the core blind. The team left at night. They crossed the wastelands, entered the ruins of a fallen city. There they planted. The device covered it with ash and left without sound. Next morning, the stars changed. The core ships shifted their path. They moved away from Earth, believing it lifeless again inside. The command ship, a core leader, growled. He ordered scans, found nothing. Ordered scouts. They returned with no signs. The core laughed. They said Earth had finally died. But Earth was breathing beneath the dust back in the mountain. The pilot stepped into a new chamber. Inside was the drone ship, rebuilt, upgraded. It was fast. Now it had a shield. It could reach orbit. The general nodded, gave the signal. The launch began at dawn. Smoke rose from stone. The drone shot upward, sliced the clouds, entered space from above. The pilot saw Earth, wounded, scattered, but still spinning. Still alive, the drone moved toward the red moon. It hid behind rocks. It watched the core ship, massive, shining, full of pride. The pilot whispered to himself, not words of hate, but words of purpose, not revenge, but duty. He released the scanner. It floated near the enemy ship. It captured sound, images, patterns. One voice came clear, the same voice that once laughed, but this time the tone was not joy. It was doubt. The core were confused. Reports showed no life, yet their ship had been attacked. They blamed each other. They searched again. The pilot sent the data back to Earth. The engineer read it. She smiled. Not with her lips, but with her eyes. She found flaws in the core code, small ones missed by their pride. She said it was like a wall with cracks, a wall humans could break. Work began at once. New programs were written, new weapons designed. Everything small, everything hidden in one corner of the base. A child drew a picture. It showed a broken Earth and a hand reaching for the stars. He gave it to the general, said it was his dream. The general placed it on the wall, said it was their mission across space. Other worlds watched. They had seen Earth burn. They had seen the core laugh, but now they saw something else. They saw human signals, strange and smart, fast and strong. They began to whisper, could it be true? Could humans still fight? The core council met again, far from Earth, in towers of light and glass. They asked why Earth still moved, why reports kept changing, why their ships were failing. One voice said maybe humans were not weak. Another said maybe they were becoming worse, dangerous, unpredictable. But the leader rose, said fear was useless. Stuff had crushed them again. Said send the fire once more. A new fleet was formed. It headed toward Earthback. On the ground, the base-prepared children were moved to deep shelters. Farms were covered, lights turned low, but fear did not rule them. Engineer handed the general a device, said it was ready. He asked what it was called. She said it had no name. Only a purpose to end the silence. The drone returned. It landed near the mountain. Its wings burned, its engines tired. But it carried knowledge. The pilot stepped out. He looked at the sky, saw stars and a shadow coming. He smiled not with joy, but with readiness. The time for hiding was ending. The time for warning was past. Earth was not waiting anymore. The returned fire. The sky no longer looked empty. It carried weight, not from clouds but from what approached silently through the dark above. A fleet of shadows, core ships, larger than before, faster, made for one reason: to finish what they started inside the mountain. The air was still. People moved like waves. No panic, only purpose. Minds were sharp, hands steady. The general walked through the hall. His steps slow, eyes watching every face. Each person carried fire, not anger, not hate, but something deeper. The engineer worked on a control board. Wires glowed under her fingers. Energy moved through copper veins. She gave a signal. The weapon was ready. The same device built from core designs, changed by human minds. No longer a tool of fear, now a blade of defense. The pilot stood near his ship. It was no longer a drone. It had seats, weapons, wings shaped from alien metal, painted with the flag of Earth, not for pride, but for memory. He climbed in, checked each control, nodded once. The general called a meeting. Leaders gathered: farmers, teachers, engineers, soldiers. All stood together. The general spoke with calm voice. He said, "This is not a fight for land, not for power. This is a fight for the right to exist, to speak, to breathe." He looked at every eye, said they must act before the sky falls again. A plan was shown, simple, fast. One team would move to space, target the core flagship, plant a virus into their system, one made by human hands, one they would never expect. Another team would protect Earth, hold the ground, shield the base. Volunteers stepped forward. No one asked them, no one forced them. They chose. Some were young, some were old, some had lost everything. That loss became their strength. The ship lifted under moonlight, silent, focused, carrying the pilot, the engineer, and 3 others. They passed the clouds, reached the black sea of stars, moved under the belly of the enemy fleet. The core did not see them, their scanners still blind. Tricked by signals planted weeks ago, the small ship slipped through. Attached to the side of the flagship, like a shadow inside the enemy ship. Core officers spoke with pride. They shared reports. Said Earth would fall this time. Said humans were stubborn, but not dangerous. They had no idea what waited below. The engineer hacked the system. Her fingers danced on the keys. Code flowed like water. The virus entered the heart of the ship, quiet, unseen. It did not destroy. It listened. It copied. Then it shut everything off. Lights faded. Engines stopped. Weapons froze. The pilot gave the signal back on Earth. The second team saw the sky blink. A light turned red, then green. That was enough. From hidden towers, beams fired not bullets, but focused heat, fast and sharp. They hit 3 ships, split them in seconds. Core fleet moved in confusion. Command stopped. Orders failed. Ships collided. Fear spread among them. The kind of fear they never expected to feel from humans inside the flagship. Alarms screamed. Doors locked. Systems crashed. The virus worked like a mirror, showing the core their own weakness. The general watched from the mountain. His hand rested on the wall. He said nothing, but his breath was steady. The child who once drew stars now watched the real ones. He held a radio, listened to voices speak with strength. The core tried to respond, sent new ships, but Earth was not alone this time. Other signals appeared from deep space, small fleets from distant worlds. Ones that had once stayed silent, now moved toward Earth. They had seen enough. The fall, the fire, the rise. They joined not to rule, but to stand. The battle lasted hours. Smoke crossed the stars. Metal burned. Voices cried. But the core remained. Earth did not fall. The flagship broke apart. One half drifted. The other vanished into fire. The pilot steered his ship home, his eyes tired but sharp. He saw Earth again, still there, still spinning, still alive. He landed near the mountain, walked down the path. Children ran to meet him. He smiled, this time with peace. The engineer stepped out, held the last piece of the enemy system. She placed it in a box, said it was history now. The general called for silence. He stood before the people, told them the fleet was broken, told them the sky was clear, told them the world was still theirs. No cheers, only quiet nods, the kind that say more than sound. The core voice never returned. No more broadcasts, no more threats. The stars watched, the galaxy waited, but Earth no longer waited. It had spoken, not in anger, not in hate, but in strength, and that voice could not be silenced again. One world, one voice. The stars no longer looked far. They felt close, familiar once. They had watched from silence. Now they carried echoes of war. But not all war ends in ashes. Some wars awaken. What was sleeping Earth stood quiet, not broken, not waiting, just watching. Smoke had faded. Fires had turned to warmth. Ruins had become gardens. Metal walls now held laughter. The mountain base was no longer a hiding place. It was now the heart of something greater. The general walked through open fields. He saw children planting trees. He saw old men fixing broken radios. He saw young women teaching science in caves. What had been fear was now action. What had been pain was now memory. Memory carved deep into every wall. The pilot worked with new recruits. He showed them how to fly without sound, how to read the sky like a map, how to feel the ship like a second skin. He no longer flew alone. Others had joined him. People who once walked on rubble now soared through stars. The engineer sat with her tools. She no longer needed alien parts. She had built her own machines with earth bones. Power drawn from wind, from sun, from heat deep below the ground. She smiled at her students, told them to build not just with hands, but with heart across oceans and deserts. People rose from hiding. They walked to light. They followed signal songs. Stories they carried, no weapons, only tools, book seeds. A new network was born, not of governments, not of flags, but of voices. Clear, strong together, one voice carried the message to the stars. It said Earth stands. It said we remember. It said we learn. It said we do not kneel far beyond the moons. Pieces of broken core ships floated in silence. Inside one ship, a single signal blinked. Not core, not alien. Human. The signal repeated. Pieces offered, but not at the cost of freedom. Some listened, some turned away, but none laughed. The core high council stood in silence. They had lost fleets. They had lost fear. They now faced something they never expected. Respect. No invasion returned. No threat came again. But something else arrived. A small ship, not armed. Painted white, sent by Earth, carrying stories, maps, messages, not warnings, not orders, only truth. Inside that ship was a screen. It played a voice. The same general who once stood in shadow, now stood in light. He said, we were attacked, we were burned, we were left for dead. But we are not dead. We are human. We fall, we bleed, we rise. He said, this galaxy is full of power, but power is nothing without memory, without care, without understanding. He said, we are not here to rule, not here to beg, only here to live. The message ended with silence. No more words, only the sound of Earth's wind back home. A celebration took place. No fireworks, no parades, just candles, lanterns made from old paper. Children floated them in rivers. Each light carried a name, a story, a hope. The pilot watched from a hill. Beside him sat the engineer. The general stood behind them. None spoke. They did not need to. Above them, a new satellite blinked, built by Earth hands, not for spying, not for control, but for learning. It sent signals, songs, lessons, pictures of trees, of oceans, of faces. In one picture, a boy stood holding a flower. Behind him was a wall with drawings, stars, mountains, a ship made of light. That picture reached other worlds, and on those worlds, children stared. They asked, what is Earth? Who are humans? Why do they smile after fire? And stories were told, stories of a world that was bombed, mocked, burned, but refused to vanish stories of people who built from ashes, who turned pain into power, who turned loss into light. The stars remembered, and Earth became more than a name. It became a voice, a guide of fire that warmed not just its own people, but others who had lived in fear. The galaxy changed not with war, but with a whisper that said, we are here. We are not perfect, we are not pure, but we are present. We stand, we walk, we grow. And the voice that once laughed now stayed silent because it had heard something stronger, not a threat, not a scream, but a heartbeat, the heartbeat of a world that rose together. The end.